When the most famous basketball player in the world walked up to the door of his own club on a cold Friday night in Charlotte, North Carolina, nobody inside had any idea what was about to happen. He was not dressed like a legend. No expensive coat, no gold chains, no bodyguards, no fanfare. Just a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and clean white sneakers. Just a man walking up to a velvet rope like any other person on any other night. The music was thumping inside. People were laughing. The line was moving. The whole world was having a party. And then a 26-year-old bouncer named Trevor Oakes looked this man up and down, checked his tablet, scrolled once, scrolled twice, looked back up, and said 4 words that would change everything. You are not on the list. Now here's the thing you need to understand before this story goes any further. This was not just any club. This was Legacy. The hottest spot in Charlotte. The place people drove from 3 states away just to stand outside of. The place with a 6-week waiting list and walls covered in championship photos, and the kind of energy that made you feel like greatness was in the air you were breathing. And every single dollar that built it came from the man standing outside the velvet rope. Michael Jordan had chosen the location himself, approved every photo on the wall, written the dress code, written the rules, built the whole thing from the ground up with his own money and his own vision and his own name attached to it. And now a bouncer was telling him to step aside. Michael said calmly, without anger, without raising his voice even 1 degree, "I own this place." Trevor did not move the rope. The music kept thumping. People kept walking past. The world kept going like nothing was happening at all. And then something nobody expected occurred. Michael Jordan did not argue, did not call the manager, did not make a scene or pull out his phone to prove who he was or demand that anyone treat him differently. He stepped back from the rope. He smiled. Not an angry smile. Not the smile of a man planning revenge. Something quieter than that. Something more interesting than that. The smile of a man who has just gotten an idea that is going to change everything. Not just for himself, but for people he has not even met yet. He pulled out his phone and made 1 call. And what happened in the next 48 hours is something that nobody in that club, nobody on that street, and nobody standing behind that velvet rope could have possibly seen coming. Because 3 miles away from that velvet rope, at that exact same moment, a 10-year-old boy named Darius Webb was sitting alone on the cold concrete steps of a run-down rec center, holding a deflated basketball, crying so quietly that nobody in the world could hear him. Nobody except the wind. And somehow, and in a way that will make your jaw drop by the time you reach the end, the man at the door and the boy on the steps were connected by a secret that had been buried for 15 years. A secret about a father in prison. A secret about 20 minutes on a basketball court that changed a life. A secret about greatness. Where it comes from. Where it goes when life knocks it down. And whether it can ever find its way back to the people who were born to carry it. What Michael Jordan did after he stepped away from that rope did not just save a building. It reunited a family. It gave a boy back something he did not even know had been taken from him. And it sent a message to every single person who has ever been told they are not on the list, that the closed door is not the end of the story. Sometimes the closed door is exactly where the real story begins. But here is what will keep you up at night. There is a moment near the end of all of this. A moment in a gray visiting room with bolted down chairs and recycled air, where something happens that nobody planned, nobody organized, and nobody could have predicted from that cold Friday night outside a velvet rope. And when it happens, there is not a single person in that room who is able to keep it together. Not Sandra, not Marcus, not even Michael Jordan himself. And the person at the center of it all is a 10-year-old boy with a basketball in his hands and 15 years worth of letters in his heart, and his father's hands and his mother's courage, and a story that proves beyond any doubt that greatness does not die when life knocks it down. It just finds somewhere else to live. Watch the whole video, because the moment that bouncer said you are not on the list, he set something into motion that none of us could have written if we tried. And by the end of this, you will understand exactly why Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player who ever lived, considers that cold Friday night standing outside his own club, unable to get in, to be one of the most important moments of his life. Stay with it. Every single word is worth it. The night was cold and sharp, the kind of cold that bites your ears and makes your eyes water even when you are not crying. It was a Friday in late November in Charlotte, North Carolina. The city was alive with noise. Cars honking, music thumping from restaurant windows, people laughing under yellow streetlights. The whole world felt like it was having a party. And right in the middle of all that noise stood a man in a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans and clean white sneakers. No gold chains, no fancy coat, no bodyguards walking 6 steps behind him. Just a man. Just him and the cold air and the sound of bass music leaking through the front door of a place called Legacy. Legacy was not just any club. Legacy was the hottest spot in Charlotte. People drove from 3 states away to get in. The waiting list for a table was 6 weeks long. The walls inside were covered with framed photos of champions, trophies, game-winning shots, fists raised in triumph. The whole place had been built to celebrate greatness, and it had been built by Michael Jordan. He had poured his own money into Legacy 2 years ago. He had chosen the location himself, standing in the empty parking lot one summer afternoon, pointing and saying, "Right here, build it right here." He had approved the photos on the walls, the lighting, the music policy, the dress code. Every single detail. But tonight, Michael Jordan was not dressed like a man who owned anything. He had come straight from a long drive. He was tired. He had not planned on stopping. Not really. But he was in the neighborhood and something pulled him toward the door. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was just that cold wind pushing him forward. He walked up to the front entrance. There were 2 bouncers at the door. Big men. Serious faces. Black jackets with Legacy printed in gold letters on the chest. The one on the left was named Trevor Oakes. He was 26 years old and had been working the door for 4 months. He was good at his job. Fast eyes, no nonsense, a memory for faces. He had a list on a tablet and he checked it the way a soldier checks his weapon. Carefully, every time. Michael stepped up to the velvet rope. Trevor looked at him, not with excitement, not with recognition. Just the flat, professional look of a man doing his job. "Name?" Trevor said. Michael almost smiled. "Jordan?" he said. "Michael Jordan." Trevor looked down at his tablet, scrolled again, looked up. "You're not on the list," Trevor said. The music thumped. A group of women in bright dresses walked past, getting waved through without a second look. A man in a suit nodded at Trevor and got a nod back. The rope went up. The rope came down. Michael stood there. "I own this place," Michael said. His voice was calm, not angry, just stating a fact the way you state that the sky is blue. Trevor did not blink. "Sir, I need a name on the list or a reservation. Those are the rules." "I wrote those rules," Michael said. Trevor looked at him again. Gray hoodie, jeans, sneakers. No ID offered. No entourage. No call ahead. Trevor had been warned about exactly this kind of situation. People who claimed to know the owner, claimed to be someone important, tried to talk their way in. His manager, a sharp woman named Rochelle Dempsey, had told him on his very first night, "The rules are the rules, no exceptions. Not for anybody." "Sir," Trevor said, "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." The rope did not move. Michael Jordan, 6-time NBA champion, 5-time MVP, the man whose face had sold more shoes than any human being in history, was standing outside his own club on a cold November night. And he could not get in. He stood there for one long moment. The bass from inside the club moved through the door and into his chest like a second heartbeat. Then, slowly, Michael Jordan smiled. Not a mean smile. Not a smile that said, "You'll be sorry." Not a smile that promised revenge. It was the smile of a man who had just gotten a very interesting idea. He stepped back from the rope, pulled out his phone. made one call. And what happened in the next 48 hours would change the lives of people who did not even know his name yet. Starting with a 10-year-old boy named Darius Webb, who was, at that very moment, sitting alone on the cold concrete steps of a rec center 3 miles away, holding a deflated basketball and crying so quietly that nobody heard him. Nobody except the wind. And somehow, in a way that would take the entire rest of this story to explain, those two moments were connected. The man at the door, the boy on the steps, and a secret that had been buried for 15 years. Darius Webb was not supposed to be crying. He was 10 years old, and he told himself every single day that 10 was too old for crying. His mother, a woman named Sandra Webb, had raised him to be tough. Not tough in a mean way, tough in the way that a tree is tough. Bendable, rooted, able to survive storms without breaking. But tonight, Darius felt like he was breaking. The rec center behind him was called the Eastside Community Sports Center, and it was the kind of place that used to be great. Old photos on the walls showed championship teams, smiling kids holding trophies, coaches with their arms around players. The floors had been smooth once. The hoops had been straight. Now the floors were warped and squeaky. One of the backboards had a crack running through it like a lightning bolt frozen in glass. The bathroom faucets dripped and the ceiling leaked when it rained. The whole building smelled like old rubber and rust. But Darius loved it more than anywhere else on earth. Because this was where his father had played. His father's name was Calvin Webb. In this neighborhood, that name meant something. Calvin Webb had been the best player this rec center had ever produced. Everybody said so. He had been fast and fearless, with hands so sure the ball seemed to stick to them like Velcro. Coaches at bigger schools had noticed. Scouts had come to watch. For one bright season, it had looked like Calvin Webb might go somewhere. Then life happened. A bad knee. A lost scholarship. And then a series of choices. Some small, some huge, that pulled Calvin away from the court and into a darker kind of life. He was in prison now, had been for 4 years. Darius had not seen him since he was 6 years old. He had one memory of his father, and just one, that he kept like a photograph pressed flat inside his chest. Calvin bouncing a basketball in this very parking lot, tossing it to a little Darius, saying, "Hold it like it belongs to you, 'cause it does." That was it. That was the whole memory. And tonight Darius had come to the rec center for practice, only to find a sign on the door. A white piece of paper taped at eye level, plain and official and terrible in the way that simple things can be terrible. Notice of closure. Due to lack of funding, the Eastside Community Sports Center will close permanently on December 15th. We are grateful for your years of support. December 15th was 16 days away. Darius had read the sign 3 times. Then he sat down on the steps with his basketball, and he breathed very carefully the way his mother had taught him when things got too big inside his chest. It did not work tonight. The ball in his hands was soft. The air had been leaking out slowly for 2 weeks, and he had not had money to get it properly pumped. He bounced it once on the concrete. It barely came back up. It made a sad little thud and then wobbled sideways like it had given up on itself. He thought about his father. He thought about the sign. He thought about the team. His team. 8 kids who came to this rec center every Tuesday and Thursday because it was the one place in their neighborhood that felt safe and purposeful, and theirs. This was not just a building, it was a promise. A promise that said, you belong somewhere. You matter here. Come back on Tuesday and we will still be here. Without it, 8 kids would have nowhere to go after school, in a neighborhood that had plenty of nowhere and not nearly enough somewhere. Darius pressed the soft ball between his palms. He thought about his father's hands. He thought about how he had his father's hands. Long fingers, wide palms. The kind of hands that looked like they were built for catching things. His mother had told him that once on a night when she was feeling open and soft in the way she very rarely let herself be. "You've got your daddy's hands," she had said. "Don't waste them." He had not wasted them. He practiced every single day, and now the place where he practiced was going to close. For the first time in a long time, Darius Webb, age 10, cried. He did not make noise. He just let the tears come down his face in the cold air, and he sat with them until he heard footsteps. He wiped his eyes fast, looked up. It was his coach, a young man named Marcus Teal. Marcus was 24, barely older than a teenager himself, with a gap between his two front teeth and a laugh like a foghorn. He had been coaching the East Side kids for 2 years on a volunteer basis. He had his own job, working nights at a grocery store, and he spent his days off at this rec center because he believed in these kids the way some people believe in religion. Completely, without proof, just faith. Marcus saw the sign. He stood and read it again, took a breath slow and deep through his nose, set his bag down on the step. Then he sat down next to Darius without saying anything, picked up the deflated ball, pressed on it gently with both thumbs, set it back down between them. "You see the date?" Darius said. "Yeah," Marcus said. 16 days, Darius said. "Yeah," Marcus said again. They sat together in the cold. The streetlight above them buzzed like it was trying to stay awake. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then went quiet, as if even the dog understood this was not a night for noise. "What do we do?" Darius asked. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He had a habit of doing that, opening his mouth before the right words were ready and then waiting until they arrived rather than filling the space with the wrong ones. It was one of the things Darius trusted about him. "I don't know yet," he said finally, "but I know we don't quit tonight. Tonight we just sit here for a minute, and then we figure it out." Darius nodded. He did not know that figuring it out was already happening somewhere else entirely, that a chain of events had already been set into motion 3 miles away by a man he had never met, who was at this very moment sitting in a parked car with his phone in his hand and that quiet, dangerous smile still on his face. Marcus put his arm around Darius's shoulders. The deflated ball sat between them on the cold concrete step, soft and lopsided and still. Neither of them knew that ball, that exact ball, and would one day become famous. Michael Jordan sat in his car in the parking lot of Legacy. The engine was off. The heat was on. Outside, the night moved around him. People walking past, a couple arguing near a food truck, a taxi sliding through a puddle and sending a sheet of water onto the curb. The world kept going the way it always did, unbothered, not knowing or caring that the most famous basketball player alive had just been turned away from his own front door. Michael did not care either. Not about the embarrassment, not about the story it would make, or the laugh it would get when he told it later. He was thinking about something else entirely. He looked at his phone for a long moment, turning it over in his hand the way he used to turn a basketball, feeling the weight of it, deciding what to do next. Then he called a man named Elton Price. Elton Price was Michael's oldest friend in Charlotte. Not from the fame years, not from the championship years, but from before all of it. They had grown up in the same city, gone to separate schools, and found each other again in their 30s through a charity basketball event. Elton was not famous. He was not rich. He ran a small community outreach organization called Roots Forward, which helped underfunded programs in Charlotte stay alive. He drove a 10-year-old minivan and wore the same brown coat from October to March, and never once seemed to notice or mind either of those things. Michael trusted him the way you trust people who knew you before the world decided who you were, before the shoes and the rings and the statue outside the arena. Elton had known him when he was just a man trying to prove something. That kind of friendship did not expire. The phone rang twice. "You know what time it is?" Elton said by way of hello. "I just got turned away from my own club," Michael said. A pause. Then a long, slow laugh, the kind that builds from the belly and takes a moment to fully arrive. "Say that again." "The bouncer didn't recognize me. Wouldn't let me in." Elton laughed harder. The kind of laugh that is completely honest, with no performance in it at all. "That is the greatest thing I have heard in my entire life." "I'm glad you find it funny," Michael said. But he was smiling. He could feel it on his own face without needing a mirror. Did you try to explain? Did you tell him who you were? I told him I owned the place. Another wave of laughter. And? He told me to step aside. Elton laughed until he coughed. Michael waited. Outside the car, the food truck couple had stopped arguing and were now sharing something in a paper container, leaning close together like the argument had never happened. Listen, Michael said. His voice changed, not cold, not serious in a hard way, but focused. Quiet. The voice that meant something real was coming. In 30 years of friendship, Elton had learned to pay close attention when that voice arrived. It did not come often. When it did, it mattered. Elton stopped laughing. I'm listening, he said. I want to find a program, Michael said. A youth program. Something real, something that is struggling. Not a big organization with a board and a PR team and a communications director. Something small. Something that needs exactly what I can give. Why now? Elton said. Not challenging, genuinely asking. Michael thought for a moment. He looked through the windshield at the gold letters above the club entrance. Legacy. His word. His building. His name on the deed. Because I walked up to a door tonight and got treated like I was nobody, he said slowly. And it reminded me of something. A pause. It reminded me of being nobody. Before any of this. Before the first ring, before the first shoe deal, before any door in the world opened for me automatically. I want to do something with that feeling before it goes away. Before I go back to being comfortable. The car was quiet. The heater pushed warm air against the windshield. How soon? Elton said. This week, Michael said. Elton went quiet in the way he did when he was sorting through information. Not stalling, just organizing. A few seconds passed. I know a coach, he said at last, slowly, like he was thinking out loud. Young guy, Marcus Teal, running a kids' basketball program at the East Side Rec Center on pure volunteer hours. No pay, no budget. Place is about to close. I saw the notice today. 16 days. Kids? Michael said. 8 of them, ages 9 to 12. Good kids, serious about it. Elton paused. One of them in particular, he stopped. Tell me, Michael said. His name is Darius Webb, Elton said carefully. His father is Calvin Webb. He let the name sit in the air between them like something with its own weight. Michael was quiet. He turned the name over slowly in his memory, searching the way you search a dark room, reaching for something you know is there but cannot quite locate. Calvin Webb. Something moved. Distant. Foggy at the edges, but present. Why do I know that name? Michael said. You might not remember, Elton said. But Calvin Webb came to one of your open camps. Long time ago. 2004, maybe 2005. Kid had real talent. Something genuine. Blew his knee out 2 weeks later, and that was the end of it. Michael said nothing. The food truck couple outside had walked away now, disappearing around the corner together, the argument completely forgotten. The street was quieter. Even the cold felt different. Less sharp, more still. His son is 10 years old, Elton said quietly, and he practices every day with a deflated basketball. The car was very quiet for a long moment. Send me the address, Michael said. Word travels fast in small communities. By Saturday morning, everyone connected to the East Side Rec Center knew about the closure notice. Parents called each other from kitchen tables and parking lots and break rooms at work. Kids texted in their group chat with the kind of fast, panicked energy that young people use when something real and adult crashes into their world without warning. An older woman named Miss Pauline, who had run the snack table at every game for 11 years and who everyone called the mayor of the gym, sat at her kitchen table with her phone in her lap and cried without embarrassment or apology. She had watched babies grow into players in that gym. She had handed out orange slices and juice boxes and quiet encouragement to children whose home lives were complicated and whose futures were uncertain. She had learned all their names, not just the kids, but the siblings, the parents, the grandparents who came to watch. That gym was not a building to her. It was a living thing. And now someone was telling her it was going to die. She cried. Then she called 6 people. Then she made a casserole because that was what Miss Pauline did when the world went wrong. Marcus Teal had barely slept. He had spent Friday night at his kitchen table with his laptop open, 3 tabs running at the same time. Grant applications, community funding programs, emergency city council proposals. He had a notebook full of phone numbers written in his fast, slanted handwriting. He had already left 2 voicemails with the city's Parks and Recreation Department and received 1 automated reply that said someone would get back to him within 5 to 7 business days. 5 to 7 business days. He had 16. He brewed coffee at 2 in the morning and drank it standing at his kitchen window, looking out at the dark street below, doing the math in his head the way you do when the numbers keep coming out wrong, no matter how many times you add them up. By Saturday afternoon, he had gathered the team. They came in 1s and 2s, some with their parents, some alone. They sat in a circle on the warped gym floor. 8 kids in various states of athletic gear, all of them wearing expressions that were too serious and too old for their faces. The kind of expressions that children get when they understand, maybe for the first time, that the world does not protect the things you love automatically, that some things have to be fought for. Darius sat cross-legged at the front of the circle with the deflated ball in his lap, pressing it with his thumbs the way he always did when he was thinking hard. His face was still. His eyes were steady. He looked, Marcus thought, like someone who had already decided something, but was waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. The others sat around him. Tamika Rhodes was 11 years old and the fastest player on the team. With cornrows and a front tooth gap, she claimed made her more aerodynamic when she drove to the basket. She was the one who could take the ball baseline and finish through contact without flinching. She did not back down from anything. Not bigger defenders, not bad calls, not hard news. She sat now with her arms folded and her jaw set, the way she looked right before she did something impressive. Javon Price, no relation to Elton, was 9 years old and the youngest on the team, with enormous dark eyes behind thick-framed glasses and a jump shot so smooth and repeatable that older players stopped their own games to watch when he got the ball. He came to every single practice alone on a city bus, transferring once downtown because his mother worked double shifts and could not drive him. He had never missed a practice, not one. Brianna Solis was 12 and the team captain, calm in the fourth quarter when everyone else was tight, the one you gave the ball to when everything mattered. She wanted to be an architect one day, and she approached basketball the same way she approached everything else, with precision, structure, and a quiet confidence that made other people feel steadier just by being near her. The other 4, Kwame, Destiny, Raphael, and a quiet boy everyone called Boo, whose real name was Theodore Barnes, completed the circle. Theodore had gotten the nickname because he was so silent and so suddenly present that people were often startled when they noticed him in a room. He was one of the best listeners Marcus had ever coached. He absorbed everything. Marcus looked at all of them. He did not dress it up. He did not soften the edges or wrap it in false hope the way adults sometimes do with children, as if kids cannot handle the shape of a hard truth. These kids could handle it. He knew them well enough to know that. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said. "The situation is real. We have 16 days. "Can we raise money?" Tamika said immediately. Already problem solving, already moving forward. That was Tamika. "I'm working on it," Marcus said, "but the number is big. The building needs serious repairs. The lease is behind. The equipment budget has been empty for months. We are not talking about a bake sale situation." "What is the number?" Brianna asked. Direct, calm, an architect asking for the blueprint. Marcus paused. He thought about softening it. He didn't. "About $60,000. The gym was silent. $60,000. To these kids, that number lived on a different planet. It was the kind of number that belonged to television and faraway people and problems that other families had. Not this gym, not this circle, not them. Javon pushed his glasses up and looked at the floor. Kwame let out a slow breath. Destiny leaned into Raphael's shoulder without either of them saying a word. "Is there anyone we can call?" Darius said. His voice was even. Controlled in that Sandra Webb way, not cold, just deliberate. Like every word had been chosen carefully before it was released. "I've called some people," Marcus said. He did not tell them about Elton Price. He did not tell them about the conversation that had happened the night before, or the phone call that had ended with a voice saying, "Send me the address." He was not ready to offer that yet. Hope was a powerful thing and a fragile one. He had learned that building it too early on uncertain ground could cause more damage than the original problem when it collapsed. He wanted to be sure first, then he would tell them. "For right now," Marcus said, "we do what we always do. We practice, we play, we show up. We do not stop until someone turns the lights out for good, okay?" 8 heads nodded, slowly at first, then with more certainty, like a current moving through water. They spent the next 2 hours running drills on that warped floor, under those buzzing lights, with the leaking spot in the ceiling and the cracked backboard and the ball that Darius kept squeezing between his palms as if willpower alone could fill it back up. Marcus stood on the sideline and watched them, and felt something in his chest that was made of equal parts love and fear. Love for what these kids were. Fear that he would not be enough to save the place that was making them into it. He blew his whistle, called a new drill, watched them run. He did not know that 72 hours later, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, a black SUV would turn slowly into the parking lot outside and come to a quiet stop. He did not know what was inside it. He did not know that the story was already in motion, that the wheel had already been set turning on a cold Friday night outside of Velvet Rope, by a man with a gray hoodie and a quiet smile and one phone call made in a dark parking lot. All Marcus knew was that he had 16 days, and he was not going to waste a single one. It was a Tuesday. Practice had started at 4 o'clock as always. The kids came in the way they always did. Tamika first, already bouncing on her toes before she cleared the door. Javon second, glasses fogged from the cold outside, wiping them on his jersey before he could even see the court. Brianna third, bag on one shoulder, laces already double knotted, ready before she arrived. The others filtered in behind them until all 8 were present. And the gym had that particular energy it only got when they were all in it together. Warm and alive and purposeful, like a fire that needed all its logs to burn properly. Marcus ran them through their warm-up, stretching first, then light footwork, then the passing drill he always used to open practice. 2 lines at half court, chest pass, shuffle left, shuffle right, repeat. The sound of sneakers on the floor and the clean slap of the ball against open palms was steady and rhythmic. A heartbeat, the gym's heartbeat. Marcus was counting reps out loud. 12, 13. Keep your hands ready, Kwame. Don't wait for it to come to you. Go get it. 14. Good, Destiny, that's it. 15. Then the side door opened. Not the front door, the side door. The one that was supposed to be exit only. The one that had a spring mechanism that had been broken for 2 years, and that squeaked so loudly and so dramatically every single time it moved that it could stop a conversation, interrupt a drill, wake someone from a dead sleep. It had been squeaking that way since before any of these kids were old enough to play here, and nobody had ever fixed it because somehow, over time, that squeak had become part of the place. Part of the sound of it. It squeaked now, and everyone turned. A man walked in. Gray hoodie, dark jeans, clean white sneakers. A plain gym bag hanging from one hand, held loosely, the way people carry things they are used to carrying. He stood just inside the doorway and took a moment to look around the gym, the way someone looks at a place they are seeing for the very first time, but want to remember forever. His eyes moved slowly and deliberately. To the ceiling, where a water stain spread brown and wide above the far baseline. To the floors, warped and pale in the middle, where years of sneakers had worn the finish down to almost nothing. To the cracked backboard at the far end, that lightning bolt of a fracture running top to bottom. To the plastic bucket beneath the ceiling leak, sitting there patient and dutiful. To the old photos on the wall, championship teams from years past, kids long grown, coaches long moved on, all of them frozen in their best moments. He took all of it in without expression. Not pity, not judgment. Something more like inventory. Then his eyes came down to the kids, and the kids stared back. The man was tall. Very tall, with the kind of stillness that very large, very certain people sometimes have. Not the stillness of someone who is bored or empty, but the stillness of someone who has already settled every argument inside themselves and no longer needs to perform anything for anyone. His hands, hanging at his sides, were enormous. Long-fingered, the hands of someone whose whole body had been built, piece by piece, around a single purpose. Darius stared at him from the front of the passing line. He did not know who this man was. Not in the first second. Not in the second second either. There was a flicker of something. A familiarity that his brain reached for and could not quite close its fingers around, like trying to catch smoke. Then Tamika made a sound. It was a very small sound. Barely a sound at all. More like the first letter of a word she forgot how to finish. A tiny, involuntary exhale that said everything. And Javon's mouth fell open, his hands going slack, so that the ball he was holding dropped and bounced twice before rolling to a stop against his shoe. And Brianna, who did not rattle, who had the composure of someone twice her age, who once made 2 free throws to win a game while the other team's parents screamed from 3 feet away. Brianna rattled. Her eyes went wide, her chin lifted. She took one small step backward without meaning to, and that was when Darius knew. He knew before he could have explained how he knew. It moved through him not as a thought, but as a physical thing. A current, a vibration, a shift in the air pressure of the room. Marcus Teal crossed the gym floor with his hand extended, and a smile so enormous it seemed to physically challenge the boundaries of his face. "Mr. Jordan," he said, "thank you for coming." And just like that, the name landed in the room. Michael Jordan. It did not land loudly. It did not need to. It landed the way heavy things land, side with a thud that you feel more than hear, that moves up through the floor and into your feet and keeps going. Michael shook Marcus's hand, firm, brief. Then he looked back at the kids. "Keep practicing," he said. His voice was low and easy and unhurried, the voice of someone who had never in his life needed to raise it to be heard. "I'll watch." Nobody kept practicing. They stood in their 2 lines and stared at the man who had won 6 championships, 5 MVPs, and changed the way every single one of them had learned to dream about this game. The man whose face they had seen on posters and highlight reels and shoe boxes their whole lives. The man who existed in their minds, somewhere in the category of things that were real but also somehow above reality. He was standing in their gym, in a gray hoodie, with a plain bag. Through the cracked backboard and the leaking ceiling and the warped floor. Michael pulled a folding chair from against the wall, unfolded it with one hand, and set it at half court with the casual ease of a man who had sat in far more important places and found them no more or less necessary than this. He sat down, leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, watching. "I said keep practicing," he said again. And this time, somehow, they did. Marcus blew his whistle. The drill started again, but everything was different now. Every pass was sharper. Every shuffle was faster. Every kid was standing an inch taller than they had been 60 seconds ago. The gym felt different, the same floor, the same ceiling, the same buzzing lights, but charged with something new, something electric and invisible that made the air feel thicker and more important. Darius came through the drill and drove to the basket and finished left-handed. Clean. Sure. He had been working on that finish for 2 full months without getting it right. Always a fraction too rushed, always a degree off. And it had been resisting him the way hard things resist you right up until the moment they suddenly don't. It went in. He turned without thinking and looked at the man in the folding chair. Michael Jordan gave him one nod. One single nod. Small, direct, certain. Darius felt something shift inside his chest. Something he could not name and did not try to. He just turned back to the drill and ran it again. After practice, Marcus kept the team together for a brief meeting. Michael stood and walked slowly onto the floor. He moved through the kids the way a tide moves through rocks. Unhurried, present, touching everything lightly. He watched Javon shoot. He adjusted Kwame's footwork with 2 words and a pointed finger. He said something quiet to Brianna that made her nod twice, seriously, like she was filing it away somewhere important. Then he walked to Darius. "What's your name?" he asked, as if he did not already know. "Darius," the boy said. "Darius Webb." Michael looked at him. Something moved across his face. Brief and quiet, gone almost before it arrived. Not pity, not sympathy. Something older and more complicated. Something that looked, from the outside, like recognition. "How long have you been playing?" Michael asked. "Since I was 5, Darius said. "You any good?" Darius looked straight back at him. "Yeah," he said. No pause, no performance, no inflation. Just the flat, honest answer of someone who has put in the hours and knows it. "I'm good." Michael smiled. That same quiet smile from the parking lot outside Legacy. The smile of someone who has just been given exactly the answer they were hoping for. "Good answer," he said. He reached into his gym bag and pulled out a basketball. New. Fully inflated. Perfect in the way that only brand new things are perfect, before the world gets its hands on them. He held it out to Darius. Darius took it, looked down at it, felt the weight of it, the grip of it, the way it sat in his father's hands. His hands. His throat was tight. "Thank you," he said. The words came out smaller than he meant them to. Smaller than the feeling behind them. "Don't thank me," Michael said. "Show me." That night, after Michael Jordan had left and the kids had gone home to their families and their dinners and their homework and their dreams that were almost certainly bigger and louder than usual that Tuesday evening, Marcus Teal locked up the rec center. He stood in the parking lot afterward with his keys in one hand and his phone in the other, and his coat hanging open because he had forgotten to button it. And the cold air was moving right through his shirt and he did not notice. He just stood there under the parking lot light looking at the building. The same building he looked at every time he locked up. The same brick and the same old sign and the same broken gutter hanging loose at the corner of the roof. And he felt like he had just lived somebody else's life for 2 hours. He called Elton Price. "He came," Marcus said. "I told you he would," Elton said. Warm and unsurprised. The voice of someone who had made a promise and was satisfied to see it kept. He sat in a folding chair and watched the whole practice, Marcus said. Then he worked with the kids for 40 minutes. Then he talked to Darius for about 5 minutes and gave him a brand new basketball. "What did he say to you?" Elton said. "One-on-one." Marcus turned away from the building and walked slowly toward his car, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. He asked about the building first. The repair costs, the lease situation, the exact timeline. He wanted numbers, not feelings. Very specific. Very focused. He paused. Then he asked about the kids, their grades, their home situations, whether they had consistent adult support at home. How long I'd been coaching them. Whether any of them had interests beyond just recreational play. "And then," Elton said. "And then he asked a lot about Darius," Marcus said. "More than the others. Not in an obvious way. He spread the questions around and came back to Darius from different angles, but it was clear. Darius was what he came to see." He reached his car but did not get in. Leaned against the door instead. "Elton, there was something in the way he looked at that kid. Something I couldn't put a name to, like he already knew him. Not knew him the way you know a stranger's face from a photograph. More like the way you know someone whose story you've been carrying around for a long time. Elton was quiet. Marcus had known Elton Price for 3 years and had learned that his silences were not empty. They were full. They were the silences of a man choosing his words the way a careful person chooses a path through uncertain ground, testing each step before he put his weight on it. "What aren't you telling me?" Marcus said. The parking lot light above him buzzed. A car passed slowly on the street, its headlights sweeping across the chain-link fence at the edge of the lot and then moving on. "There are things," Elton said at last, "that are not mine to tell. They belong to other people, and it's not my place to hand them out." A pause. "But there is someone who might want to talk to you. Someone who has been trying to figure out how to say something for a long time and hasn't found the right way yet." "Who?" Marcus said. "Calvin Webb," Elton said. The name sat in the night air between them on the phone line. Simple and heavy at the same time, the way the names of absent people sometimes are, carrying the weight of everything they represent rather than just the letters that make them up. Marcus straightened up from his car door. "Darius's father," he said. "He's been writing letters from inside," Elton said. "Has been for about 2 years now. Sandra, his mother. She's been receiving them and keeping them. She wasn't sure Darius was ready to have them. Wasn't sure he was old enough yet to hold what was in them without it breaking something in him." "What do the letters say?" Marcus asked. "They say a lot of things," Elton said carefully. "Accountability, apology. The kind of writing a man does when he has had 4 years of quiet and no choice but to sit with himself and look honestly at everything he did and everything he didn't do." He paused. "But the one thing Sandra says keeps coming back, in almost every single letter woven through all the other things, is a name." The cold was deeper now. Marcus noticed it for the first time, pulling his coat closed with one hand. "What name?" he said, though something in him had already begun to move toward the answer before Elton gave it. "Michael Jordan," Elton said. Marcus stood very still. The parking lot was quiet. The rec center sat behind him, dark and closed, holding its 16-day deadline inside it like a held breath. Down the street, the dog that had barked 2 nights ago barked again. Same 2 barks, same silence after, like a clock marking the hour. "There's a connection," Marcus said slowly. Not a question. More like a man speaking a thought out loud to see how it sounded once the air got to it. "There is a connection," Elton confirmed, "and it goes back further than you know. Further than Darius knows. Further, I think, than even Michael Jordan fully remembers. Until tonight probably reminded him." Marcus got into his car, sat in the cold of it without starting the engine. He thought about a 10-year-old boy reading a deflated ball like it was a language. He thought about a man in a gray hoodie sitting in a folding chair with that quiet, watchful look. He thought about the single nod. He had seen that nod, had watched Darius turn and receive it, and watched something shift in the boy's posture in the seconds after, like a door inside him opening 1 careful inch. He thought about letters in a shoebox that a mother had been keeping on a high shelf behind winter sweaters because she was waiting for the right moment. "Marcus," Elton said. "Yeah," Marcus said. "There is a story here that nobody has told out loud yet," Elton said. "Not completely. Not to the person who needs to hear it most." Marcus nodded even though Elton could not see him. "Darius," he said. "Darius," Elton said. The engine was still off. The windows were starting to fog at the edges from Marcus's breath. The world outside going soft and indistinct, like a photograph developing slowly in a dark room. "What do I do?" Marcus said. "Right now," Elton said. "Nothing. Let it move. Some things need to arrive in their own order." A pause. "But pay attention. When the moment comes, and it will come, make sure you are standing close enough to help." Marcus sat in the cold car outside the rec center with 12 days left on the clock, and a story underneath the story that he was only beginning to understand the shape of. He thought, there is a reason that man came here tonight. And it was bigger than a building. Sandra Webb was 32 years old and had been described by 3 separate people in her life as the strongest person I know. She had stopped accepting that as a compliment a long time ago. Strength was not something she had chosen the way you choose a coat off a rack because it fits well and looks good. Strength was what was left over when every softer option had been removed one by one until there was nothing else available. Strength was the thing that remained after the night Calvin was taken away, after the phone calls to her mother and his mother, after the court dates and the sentencing and the drive home alone with the 6-year-old boy asleep in the back seat, who did not fully understand what had just happened to his family, but who would spend the next 4 years slowly assembling the picture from the pieces adults let slip. She had built a life from that night forward, quietly, without asking for applause or acknowledgement. She worked as a medical assistant at a clinic on the east side of Charlotte, waking at 5:30 every morning with the reliability of something mechanical. She made Darius's breakfast the night before so it was ready when he got up. She paid every bill on time or one day late, never two. She kept the apartment clean and warm and stocked with the things a growing boy needed. She attended every school meeting, every parent event, every game Marcus's team played. She had not cried in front of Darius since the night Calvin went away. She did not intend to start. When Marcus Teal called and asked if he could come by on Wednesday evening, Sandra knew what it was about before he finished his second sentence. She had been expecting this conversation in one form or another for some time now. She had felt it getting closer the way you feel weather changing. Not seeing it yet, but feeling the pressure of it in the air, in the quality of the light, in some deep animal part of yourself that knows before your mind does. The letters. She had 9 of them, stored in a shoebox on the top shelf of her closet, pushed to the back behind a stack of winter sweaters she never wore anymore because Darius had given her a warmer coat 2 Christmases ago with his own saved-up money, $12.50 contributed to a group gift organized by Sandra's mother, and she had worn it every day since. The shoebox sat back there in the dark of the closet like something with a heartbeat. She was aware of it always. It had a presence in the apartment the way important things do, even when they are hidden. Calvin had been writing since his 2nd year inside. The first year she knew had been too raw. Too much anger and too much shame braided together into something too tangled to put into words that were worth sending. But in the 2nd year, something had shifted in him. The letters that arrived were careful. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, the kind of handwriting that told you the person had rewritten each sentence at least twice before committing it to the page. They did not make excuses. They did not perform remorse. They simply told the truth about things, one careful truth at a time, the way you dismantle something complicated. Slowly, methodically, with full attention to each piece. She had read every one of them many times. She sat across from Marcus at her kitchen table on Wednesday night, with a cup of tea that had gone cold between her palms, and the shoebox on the table between them, like a third person in the conversation who had not yet spoken. "I didn't know if Darius was ready," she said. Her voice was even. She had practiced being even for a long time. "What does ready look like?" Marcus asked. Gently. He had a gentleness to him that Sandra had noticed early and trusted. Not a soft gentleness. Not the kind that avoided hard things, but the kind that held hard things carefully. The way you hold something that matters. Sandra looked at the shoebox. "Old enough to understand that his father is not a villain and not a hero," she said. "Just a man who made bad choices and has been living with the weight of them every single day since. Old enough to hold something that is complicated without needing it to be simple. Without needing it to be one thing." She paused. Children want their parents to be one thing. Either good or bad. Either worth loving or worth being angry at. The truth is almost never that clean. "I think he might be ready," Marcus said. "I've been watching him this week, since Tuesday. Something has shifted in him." Sandra looked at him. She already knew about Michael Jordan's visit. Darius had come home Tuesday evening and sat at the kitchen table and told her everything, word by word, in the careful, methodical way that was so entirely his father's way of processing things that it sometimes stopped her breath. He had told her about the folding chair and the nod and the basketball. He had held the new ball the entire time he was talking, turning it in those long-fingered hands, and when he was done talking, he had looked at her and said, "Mom." He knew Dad. She had kept her face very still. "I know," she had said. Darius had stared at her. "You already knew that." "There are things I have been waiting to tell you," she said. "Until you were ready." He had not pushed her that night. He had gone to his room with the ball, and she had heard no sound from behind his door for a long time, and she had stood in the hallway outside it with her hand not quite touching the wood, just close, just near. Now she lifted the lid of the shoebox. She did not hand it to Marcus. She just rested her hand on the stack of envelopes inside. 9 of them, arranged in order, the oldest at the bottom and the most recent on top, each one handled enough times that the paper had gone soft at the folds. In 2004, she said, Calvin went to an open training camp. One of those events where Michael Jordan would work with young players from the region. Calvin was 20 years old. He had just received a scholarship to a small college in Georgia. Everything was in front of him. He was genuinely good, Marcus. Her voice carried something that was not quite pride and not quite grief, but lived in the neighborhood of both. Not good the way parents say their kids are good. Actually, honestly, demonstrably good. The kind of good that scouts drive 3 hours to see. She touched the edge of the top envelope. At that camp, Michael Jordan spent 20 minutes working with Calvin one-on-one, pulled him out of the group drill and worked with him separately. Told him he had the hands. Told him that if he stayed disciplined and stayed hungry, he had a real future in the game. She paused and looked at Marcus steadily. 2 weeks later, Calvin blew his knee in a scrimmage. Full reconstruction surgery. The scholarship was gone. The future he had been building toward was gone. And he came back to this neighborhood with nothing to hold on to and nobody telling him what the next step was supposed to be. The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car went by slowly, its headlights moving across the ceiling like a slow hand. The choices he made after that, Sandra said, I do not excuse them. He would not want me to. He does not excuse them himself. That is one of the things the letters make very clear. He owns every single one. Completely. A breath. But I understand them, and Calvin understands them. And understanding is not the same as excusing. Understanding is just seeing the full shape of a thing instead of only one side of it. What did the letters say about Michael Jordan? Marcus asked quietly. Sandra reached into the box and lifted out one envelope. Third from the top, she knew them by position without looking at the postmarks anymore. She removed the letter inside and unfolded it with the ease of someone who has unfolded it 100 times and knows exactly where each crease falls. She found the section she was looking for and read it aloud. Her voice was careful and level, a medical assistant's voice, precise with important information. He writes, I have never blamed anyone for what happened to me. Not the knee, not the scholarship, not even my own choices, because blame is just a way of staying the victim, and I am done being the victim of my own story. But I have always wanted Darius to know that a man saw something real in me once. Before the bad years, before the fall. I want my son to know that his father was seen. Michael Jordan looked at me on a basketball court and saw a future in me. I lost that future through my own failures, but it was real. The seeing was real. It happened. No one can reach back through time and make it not have happened. And I want Darius to carry that. I want him to know that someone that great looked at your father and believed in him, even just for 20 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon. Let that be worth something. Please let that be worth something. She folded the letter back slowly along its lines, placed it on the table beside the box, set her hand flat on top of it. He comes back to that in almost every letter, she said. Different words each time. Same thing underneath. She looked up at Marcus. Her eyes were dry. She had decided that a long time ago, too. I want Darius to meet Michael Jordan properly, she said. Not as a fan standing at a rope somewhere, waiting for an autograph. I want him to sit across from that man and hear from him directly that his father was real, that his father had greatness in him, that the greatness Darius carries in his own hands came from somewhere true. Her voice did not waver. Can you make that happen? Marcus thought about a gray hoodie and a folding chair and one nod. He thought about a phone call already made, an address already sent, a man who had driven across the city on a Tuesday afternoon and sat in a broken gym and watched a boy finish left-handed and then handed him a basketball like he was handing back something that had always belonged there. I think, Marcus said slowly, choosing his words the way Elton Price had taught him to choose them, it might already be happening. Sandra Webb looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and put the lid back on the shoebox. And for just 1 second, one single second that she would never mention to anyone, her eyes went bright. Michael Jordan came back on Thursday. No phone call ahead, no confirmation text, no advance notice to Marcus that he was coming so that Marcus could prepare the kids, or prepare himself, or prepare the gym in any way. He simply appeared at the side door at 4:15. 15 minutes after practice had already started, and the door squeaked its enormous squeak and everyone turned, and this time, unlike Tuesday, nobody dropped the ball. This time they kept their composure. Mostly. Javon's shuffle step went sideways for just a moment, and he had to correct it mid-drill. Tamika's pass sailed 2 inches high. Brianna received it perfectly anyway, because Brianna was the kind of person who made other people's mistakes look like they were planned. But they kept going. They did not stop. They did not stare. Marcus noticed this and felt something swell in his chest that he could only describe as pride of the purest possible kind. The kind that has nothing to do with yourself and everything to do with the people you have invested in. Michael set his bag against the wall. Then he did something nobody expected. He did not pull out the folding chair. He walked to the ball rack at the side of the gym, picked up a basketball, turned it once in his hands with the automatic ease of someone for whom that motion is as natural as breathing, and walked onto the court. "All right," he said. Just that. Just the one word, spoken to the whole gym, landing on all 8 kids at the same time. "Who's guarding me?" The gym did not erupt loudly. This was not a stadium. These were 8 children standing on a warped floor under buzzing lights in a building that was 11 days from closing. But the energy that moved through those 8 kids in that single second was as real and as electric as anything Michael Jordan had felt in any arena in his career. He felt it and recognized it, and it made him stand a little straighter without meaning to. The kids looked at each other. The calculation happened in an instant. A rapid, silent negotiation conducted entirely in sideways glances and small nods, and the particular language of people who have practiced together long enough to communicate without speaking. Darius took 1 step forward. Just 1 step. Clean and deliberate. The same step he took at the beginning of every defensive possession. Weight balanced, feet shoulder width, hands ready at his sides, and the gym ignited. Not loudly. In the small, dense, completely genuine way that 8 kids can fill a space with pure concentrated energy when something impossible is standing right in front of them and one of their own has decided to meet it. What followed was 45 minutes that none of those children would ever forget for the rest of their lives. Not one day of it. Not one single moment. Michael went at something below full speed. Not condescending, not performing slowness, but calibrated. Dialed to a setting that challenged without crushed, that asked without demanded, that showed without blinded. The speed of a teacher who understands that the point is not to demonstrate his own ability, but to expand someone else's. He worked on Darius first. Defensive footwork. The small, precise movements that happen below the highlight reels, the unglamorous architecture of good defense that most people never see because cameras follow the ball and not the feet. He moved Darius through it step by step, repositioning his feet with 2 fingers on the ankle, adjusting his hip angle with a hand on the side of his shorts, saying very little and demonstrating very much. Then he went at Tamika with a hesitation dribble, that small deceptive pause that freezes defenders for the half second a good offensive player needs. And when it worked and she reached and he was gone past her, she laughed. A real laugh. A delighted laugh. The laugh of someone who has just been shown a magic trick and found it wonderful rather than defeating. "Again," she said immediately. He did it again. This time she did not reach. She dropped her weight and held her ground. He still got by her. Barely, but the barely was a victory and she knew it, and he knew it. And the way he looked at her afterward told her that he knew. He shot free throws with Javon. Side by side at the line, both of them shooting at the same time with their own balls, Marcus feeding them. Javon's stroke was already beautiful. That smooth, repeatable, high-arching release that older players stopped to watch. But there was a hitch in his follow-through when he was tired. A small inconsistency that crept in after 20 minutes of practice and cost him 1 in 5. Michael spotted it in 4 shots. He did not announce it. He simply adjusted his own follow-through to mirror the hitch. Exaggerated it slightly so Javon could see it from the outside, and then corrected it slowly and held the corrected position, with his hand still raised and his wrist still bent, that perfect gooseneck follow-through held in the air like a photograph. Javon watched, shot again, held his own follow-through. It was right. He made the next 7 in a row. Michael stopped practice entirely. Turned around to face the other kids and pointed at Javon without looking back. "Did everyone see that?" he said. "That follow-through. That is what commitment looks like. You do not get a stroke like that from talent. You do not get it from wanting it. You get it from doing the exact same thing, the exact same way 10,000 times, until your body knows it better than your brain does." Javon pushed his glasses up with one finger. His whole face was lit from somewhere inside. Then Michael ran the baseline drill. It was a simple one. Classic, fundamental, the kind of drill that exists in every gym at every level because of the thing it teaches never stops being necessary. You drive the baseline. You take the contact. Absorb it. Don't avoid it. And you finish with the offhand. Clean. Controlled. Against all the body's natural instinct to reach for the comfortable hand, the strong hand, the known hand. He ran Darius through it. First rep, rushing. The finish was off, the ball rattling out. Again. Second rep, better, still slightly rushed. Again. 5th rep. The footwork was right, but the hand was tense. Relax the hand. The ball knows what to do if you let it. Again. 10th rep. Clean approach, right contact point. Finish was close. Close enough to feel it almost working. Again. 15th rep. Darius drove the baseline, took the contact. Marcus stepping in to provide it. A firm but fair hip check that sent Darius's weight shifting left. He absorbed it. Gathered himself in the half second between contact and the gather step. Extended. Left hand released. It went in. Not almost in, not rattled in. Clean in. The kind of in that sounds different from any other kind. A sound that every basketball player learns to recognize and chase. That pure, unambiguous, nothing but net sound that is its own reward. Marcus blew an involuntary sound through his lips. Kwame yelled something. Destiny grabbed Raphael's arm. Michael did not yell, did not pump a fist, did not perform anything. He walked to Darius and put one hand on his shoulder. Steady, present. The hand of someone who knows the difference between a made basket and a made player and understands which one actually matters. "That's yours now," he said quietly. Close enough that only Darius could hear it. "You just owned that move. You put it in your body. Nobody can reach in and take it back out." Darius was breathing hard. His jersey was damp. His new basketball sat at half court where he had left it at the start of drill work, patient and waiting. He looked up at the man standing next to him, and then he said the thing he had not planned to say. It arrived without warning, the way true things sometimes do, bypassing the careful filtering system he had inherited from his mother, and just coming straight out into the open air. "My dad used to run this court," he said. Michael Jordan did not flinch, did not shift his weight, did not let anything flicker across his face except that thing, that recognition, that complicated older thing that had been there on Tuesday and was here again now, clearer this time, less hidden. "I know," he said. 3 words, small and absolute and enormous. Darius went completely still. "You knew my dad?" "I met him once," Michael said. "A long time ago. He had good hands. Very good hands." His eyes moved to Darius's hands, those long-fingered, wide-palmed, basketball-built hands. Calvin Webb's hands. "I can see it," he said. Darius did not speak. He looked down at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time from the outside. "He ever tell you about a camp?" Michael asked. "Back in 2004? Darius shook his head slowly. "He never told me much about anything," he said. His voice stayed flat and level, but something underneath it trembled faintly like a long, thin wire in wind. Barely visible, unmistakably there. "I think," Michael said carefully, like a man placing something fragile on a surface he is not yet sure will hold it. "There are some things you might want to hear. When you're ready." "I'm ready," Darius said. Instantly. Without hesitation, no performance. No bravado. No reaching for courage because the courage was simply already there, present and steady. The same way it had been when he stepped forward to guard Michael Jordan, and the same way it had been when he said, "I'm good," without pausing, and the same way it was in everything this boy did. Just true. Michael looked at him for a long, quiet moment. The gym was still around them. The other kids had drifted to the far end, shooting around, their voices low and easy, giving this corner of the court its space without being asked. "Okay," Michael said. They sat in the hallway outside the gym. 2 plastic chairs. The orange kind that exist in every school and rec center and community building in America. The kind that are almost comfortable but not quite, as if someone designed them specifically to keep conversations from going on too long. Marcus had pulled them from the stack against the wall without being asked. Set them facing each other at a slight angle, the way people set chairs when they want to talk rather than perform. And then he had gone back into the gym and closed the door quietly behind him. The hallway was narrow and plain. A bulletin board on one wall held flyers for programs that had already ended, and sign-up sheets that were already full, and a hand-drawn poster from 3 years ago that said, "East Side Hoops in the House." In bubble letters colored in with marker, sun faded now to something softer than its original brightness. The ceiling light above them was steady, one of the few lights in the building that did not buzz or flicker. It threw a clean, even light over both of them. Michael Jordan sat in one of the orange chairs with his elbows on his knees and his hands loosely clasped between them. Darius Webb sat in the other with his new basketball held in his lap, both hands resting on top of it the way his father had told him to hold it, pressed flat against the leather. "Like it belongs to you." Michael spoke slowly. He had spoken quickly for most of his life. On courts, in press rooms, in boardrooms, in the loud, fast world that had grown up around him. But some conversations required a different speed. A speed that gave each word enough room to land fully before the next one arrived. This was one of those conversations, and he knew it without having to decide. He told Darius about the camp. It was the summer of 2004, he said. An open training event held at a facility outside Charlotte. Nothing huge, nothing televised. Not the kind of thing that makes it into documentaries or highlight packages. Just a gym and a court and a group of young players from the region who had been identified as having something worth developing. Players between 18 and 22 mostly. Some with scholarships already in hand. Some still hoping. All of them carrying that particular hunger that Michael had learned to recognize on sight. The hunger of someone who has seen a version of their future and is running as fast as they can toward it. Calvin Webb had been one of those players. He had arrived, Michael said, with tape on his left sneaker and a bag that had seen better days and a look in his eyes that was equal parts hunger and something else. Something quieter underneath the hunger that Michael had only been able to name later, looking back. It was the look of someone who understood that this moment was important in a way that could not be recovered if it went wrong. The look of someone playing without a safety net. He had been put in a defensive drill with Michael early in the session. Most of the young players in those situations defaulted to caution. They played hard, but they played careful, afraid to embarrass themselves, afraid to cross the line between competitive and disrespectful, never quite committing to the full thing. Calvin Webb had not been cautious. He guarded me straight up, Michael said. No deference, no holding back. He read my first 2 moves before I made them. Not guessing, reading. There is a difference. Guessing is random. Reading means you have watched enough and thought enough that the other person's movement tells you what is coming before they know they have told you. He paused. Let that sit. On the 3rd possession, he stole the ball, Michael said. Clean. Not because I let him, because he had done the work of understanding where I was going before I got there, and he took it at exactly the right moment. Darius was listening the way he ran drills, completely. Not just with his ears, but with his whole body, still and forward-leaning and absorbing. I looked at him after, Michael said, and I told him he had good hands. And I meant it the way I mean very few things, without any performance in it at all. Just the plain truth, stated out loud. What did he say? Darius asked. Michael almost smiled. He said thank you, and then he said, run it again. Something moved across Darius's face. Recognition. The same thing that had moved across Michael's face in the gym. That complicated older thing that was not pity and not sympathy, but was about seeing yourself in something outside yourself. That sounds like... Darius started, stopped. Like you, Michael said. Darius looked down at the ball in his lap. 2 weeks after that camp, Michael continued, your father blew his knee in a scrimmage. Full reconstruction. The scholarship he had was conditional on his health and his availability, and it was gone before the surgery was finished. He said it plainly, not brutally, not softened, just the shape of it. He came back here, to this neighborhood, without the thing he had been building toward, and after that, he made bad choices, Darius said. Not with anger, not with sadness. With the same flat, level tone that his mother used for difficult truths. The tone that says, I have already sat with this, and I am not going to pretend it is something other than what it is. Yes, Michael said. He did. I know, Darius said. He says so in his letters. Michael nodded. You read them? My mom gave me the first one Tuesday night, Darius said. After you came to practice. He paused. She's been keeping them, 9 of them. I've read them all now. Michael was quiet for a moment. He thought about Sandra Webb, a woman he had only met briefly at the gym door on Thursday who had shaken his hand and looked at him with eyes that were measuring and warm at the same time. The eyes of someone who has learned to trust carefully and does not offer it freely. He thought about a shoebox on a high shelf behind winter sweaters. He thought about the weight of 9 letters carried across 4 years of absence. What did you think? He asked. When you read them. Darius considered this carefully. His thumbs moved slightly on the surface of the ball. I thought, he said slowly, that he sounded like someone I would like if I met him. And then I thought that was a weird thing to think about your own father. Michael said nothing. He let the space stay open. And then I got mad, Darius said. For a little while. Not a lot, just enough. That is allowed, Michael said. I know, Darius said. He says that in the letters too. He says being mad is allowed. He says he would be mad too if he were me. A pause. He says a lot of true things. He always struck me, Michael said carefully, as someone who understood true things, even at 20. Some people have to get a lot older before they start telling the truth to themselves. Your father was already doing it on a basketball court at 20 years old, reading what was real instead of what he wanted to be real. That is a rare thing. Darius looked up. Here is what I want you to carry, Michael said. He leaned forward slightly, closing the distance between them, just enough to make the words feel personal and specific, meant for this boy in this hallway and nobody else. Before any of the choices, before the knee and everything after. Your father stood on a court and showed me something genuine. He was great, Darius. Not almost great. Not potentially great. Actually, truly, on that day, in that moment. Great. The hallway was very quiet. That moment was real, Michael said. It happened. It is a fixed thing now. Nobody can reach back and remove it from the record. And the greatness that was in him on that day... His eyes moved again to Darius's hands, those hands. Did not disappear when he fell. It went somewhere. It passed on. I watched you finish left-handed tonight after 15 tries, and I watched the way you stepped forward to guard me without hesitating. And I watched the way you listened and worked and refused to make excuses for the reps that were wrong, and I am telling you, it is in you, the same thing. The exact same thing. Darius was very still. His throat moved. He turned his head to the side for a moment, 1 second too, and then turned back. His eyes were clear. Whatever had come up had been met and held and settled. My dad wrote that he wanted me to know someone great believed in him, Darius said. Even just for 20 minutes. I did, Michael said simply. I believed in him then, and I believe in what he left behind now. A long quiet. He should know, Darius said, that you came here, that you sat in the folding chair, that you told me this. I think, Michael said, reaching slowly into his jacket pocket and drawing out a folded piece of paper. He already knows some of it. He held the paper out. Darius took it, turned it over, unfolded it carefully along its creases. The creases of something that had been folded and refolded many times, handled with care, carried close. It was a letter. 1 page, both sides. Neat, careful handwriting that Darius recognized immediately because he had spent 3 nights reading 9 examples of it. At the bottom of the second side, below the last careful paragraph, was a name. Calvin Webb. Darius stared at it. Your mother, Michael said quietly. She called me yesterday morning. She asked if I would give you this one in person. She said she wanted it to have a bridge. Darius held the letter in both hands without reading it. He pressed it carefully flat between his palms, feeling the weight of it, the texture of it. He folded it back exactly along its original lines and held it. Thank you, he said. The words came out full this time, every bit of their size. Michael looked at him, and this 10-year-old boy in an orange plastic chair in a narrow hallway holding a basketball in his lap, and his father's letter in his hands. And he felt something that he had not felt in a very long time. Something that did not have a name in the language of championships and competitions and records and rings. Something quieter than all of that. Something that mattered more. Sandra Webb watched her son read the letter at the kitchen table that night. She did not hover. She did not sit close or lean in or ask questions before he was ready. She settled into the armchair across the room with a book she had been trying to finish for 3 weeks. A novel about a woman rebuilding her life after a flood, which Sandra had chosen without realizing how close to home it would feel. And she held it open at the right page and did not read a single word of it. She watched him instead, with the part of herself that never stopped watching him. The part that had been watching him since the first moment she held him in a hospital room 12 years ago. No, 10 years ago. He was 10. And understood with a completeness that rearranged everything inside her that nothing in her life before that moment had been fully real. That all of it had been preparation. That this was the thing. Darius sat at the kitchen table in the same chair he always sat in, the one closest to the window, the one with the slightly wobbly leg that they had been meaning to fix for 2 years. The letter was flat on the table in front of him. He had unfolded it carefully before he sat down and smoothed it with the back of his hand, the way she had watched him handle important things. His school papers, his permission slips, the birthday card from his grandmother that he kept in his desk drawer instead of throwing away. With a quiet seriousness that said, "This matters and I am going to treat it accordingly." He read slowly. His lips moved slightly on the longer words, a habit he had carried since first grade that she had never corrected because it meant he was actually reading and not just moving his eyes across the surface of something. The letter was longer than the others. 2 full pages, both sides. The handwriting slightly smaller than Calvin's usual size, as if he had run out of space halfway through, and had to compress what remained without cutting any of it. It said many things. It said sorry in 7 different ways. Not repetitively, not circling the same apology in different clothes, but genuinely, as if each version of sorry was addressing a different specific thing that needed its own acknowledgement. Sorry for leaving. Sorry for the choices that caused the leaving. Sorry for the years of a boy's life that had passed without a father in them. Sorry for the version of Sandra she had been required to become in order to hold everything together alone. Sorry for the weight of absence which Calvin wrote about as if he understood it fully. And Sandra believed, reading between his lines as she always did, that he did understand it. That whatever the years inside had cost him, they had also given him that. The understanding of what his absence weighed. Then it talked about the knee and the scholarship and the fall. Not making excuses. The letter was very clear about that. Calvin wrote the word excuses and then crossed it out and rewrote the sentence without it, which Sandra could see in the crossed out section, still legible beneath the single line through it. He had left the crossing out visible on purpose, she thought, as proof, as evidence that he had checked himself. He was not explaining in order to be forgiven. He was explaining in order to be understood. And those 2 things, Calvin Webb had apparently learned in 4 years of very quiet living, were not the same. He wrote about the camp, about a summer afternoon in a gym in 20 minutes with a man who looked at him and saw forward instead of backward. He wrote about what that had meant to a 20-year-old kid who had grown up being told in small, persistent ways by the circumstances of his life that forward was not really a direction available to him. He wrote, "A great man looked at me and saw a future, and for 20 minutes I lived inside that future, and it was the realest thing I had ever felt." And then he wrote about Darius. Sandra's hand tightened slightly on the book she was not reading. This was the part she had read most, the part she knew by heart already from the other letters, arriving now in this final one in its fullest and most complete form, as if Calvin had been building toward it across all 9 letters the way a musician builds toward a final note. Everything before it preparation, everything pointing here. He wrote, "Son, you were born with my hands and your mother's heart, and that is the best combination a person can have in this life. My hands will find the ball wherever it goes. Your mother's heart will know what to do with it when it gets there. I do not deserve to tell you what to do with your future. I gave up that right through my own choices, and I know it, and I own it completely. But if you will allow me one thing, just one, let it be this. Do not be afraid to be great. Not for me. Not to fix what I broke or to finish what I could not. Just because greatness is in you and it belongs to you and it has been waiting there since before you were old enough to hold a basketball. I love you in a way that I do not have good enough words for, which is a hard thing for a man who has spent 4 years doing nothing but trying to find the right words. Keep playing. Keep going. I am watching even when you cannot see me. All my love, your father, Calvin." Darius read it 3 times. Sandra counted. She was not counting on purpose. She just knew. He sat for a moment after the 3rd reading with his hands flat on either side of the letter and his eyes on the middle distance. The look of someone processing something large and refusing to rush the processing. Then he said without looking up, "Mom, can I have the rest?" Sandra put down the book she wasn't reading. "Yeah, baby," she said. "You can have all of them." She got the shoebox from the top shelf, brought it to the kitchen table and set it in front of him and lifted the lid and stepped back. She made him a grilled cheese because he needed to eat and because doing something useful with her hands was how she managed the moments that were too full to just sit inside. She set the plate next to him without interrupting. He ate automatically, barely tasting it, still reading, and she stood at the kitchen counter and watched him and did not try to be anything in particular. Just present, just near. He stayed at the table until midnight. She told him at 11:45 that he had 15 more minutes, and he nodded without looking up. At midnight, she told him it was time, and he gathered the letters carefully, each one refolded along its original lines, replaced in its envelope, stacked in order, and put them back in the box. He carried the box to his room and set it on his nightstand with a care that made her throat tight. Then he picked up the basketball and lay down on his bed with it resting on his chest, both hands flat against the leather, staring at the ceiling the way he did when he was thinking about something he was not ready to say out loud yet. Sandra stood in the doorway. "You okay?" she said. "Yeah," he said. "You sure?" He turned his head and looked at her, his father's eyes in her son's face. That same steady, dark regard that Calvin had turned on the world before the world wore him down. "I want to meet him," Darius said. "My dad. I want to go see him." Sandra held the doorframe. "I know," she said. "We will." "Soon," he said. Not demanding, just clear. "Soon," she agreed. She turned off his light and pulled his door mostly closed and stood in the hallway for a moment, with her back against the wall, and her eyes on the ceiling and her hands pressed flat against the plaster behind her. Then she pushed off the wall, went to the kitchen, washed the grilled cheese pan, dried it, put it away. The next morning, Darius woke early, ate the breakfast that was already waiting, went to school, came home, did his homework at the kitchen table in the window chair, and then called Marcus. "I have an idea," he said. "Tell me," Marcus said. "We need to make a video," Darius said. "About the team, about the rec center, about what it means and what it would mean to lose it. And we need to put it online where people can see it." Marcus was quiet for a moment, not hesitating, thinking. "That is a good idea," he said carefully. "But Darius, the internet is a big place. What makes you think it would reach anyone who could actually help?" Darius held the basketball against his chest, felt its weight, felt the pressure of it against his sternum like a second heartbeat. "Because," he said, "I am going to ask someone to share it." A pause. "Who?" Marcus said, though the answer was already arriving before the question finished leaving his mouth. Moving toward him through the dark the way all inevitable things move, steady and unhurried and absolutely certain. Darius held the basketball tighter. "I think you already know," he said. They filmed it on a Saturday. 9 days had passed since the closure notice went up on the door. 7 days remained. The number sat in the back of everyone's mind the way an alarm clock sits in a dark room. Not always looked at directly, but always felt, always counting, always there. Marcus borrowed a camera from a friend named Dion, who worked at a local news station, and owed Marcus a favor from 3 years back when Marcus had helped him move an entire apartment up 4 flights of stairs in August with no elevator and no complaint. Dion handed over the camera in a soft case with 2 extra batteries and a small tripod and said, "Bring it back with all the same pieces it left with." And Marcus had said, "Always do," and driven straight to the rec center. Elton Price arrived 20 minutes later in his 10-year-old minivan, wearing his brown coat, carrying 2 extension cords and a portable light he had borrowed from somewhere he did not explain. He set the light up in the corner of the gym that showed the building most honestly, the warped floor catching the light in a way that made its imperfections visible without exaggerating them, the cracked backboard in the background, the old photos on the wall behind it. Not flattering, not staged. True. Sandra Webb came and stood near the side door with her coat buttoned and her hands in her pockets. She did not direct anything. She did not suggest angles or offer opinions about how things should look. She was simply there, the way she was always simply there, solid and quiet and present in the way that mattered most. The kids wore their practice jerseys. They had not been told to. They had each decided independently and arrived that way, and when they all walked in and saw each other in matching jerseys, nobody said anything about it because nothing needed to be said. Some things organized themselves. Marcus set up the camera on Dion's small tripod at the free throw line, aimed toward the near baseline where he had placed one of the orange chairs. He adjusted the height, checked the frame, looked through the viewfinder at the gym behind the chair. The whole complicated, beloved, imperfect truth of the place, visible in a single shot. He stepped back. "Okay," he said. "Darius." Darius walked to the chair and sat down. He was not nervous. Sandra watched him cross the gym floor and sit and look at the camera, and she recognized the quality of his stillness. It was Calvin's stillness before something important, the gathering in that happened when her husband had decided to commit to something fully and was simply waiting for the moment to begin. Marcus pressed record. The red light came on. And Darius Webb, age 10, looked directly into the camera and began to talk. He did not use notes. He had not prepared a speech. He had thought about what he wanted to say for 2 days, turning it over while he walked to school, while he ate breakfast, while he lay on his bed at night with the basketball on his chest. And now he simply said it, the way it had arranged itself inside him over those 2 days. In order? Clearly. He talked about the team first. He talked about Tamika and the way she drove baseline without fear, the way she finished through contact and came back for more, the way she showed up every single Tuesday and Thursday no matter what the weather was doing outside. He talked about Javon and his glasses and his jump shot and the city bus he rode alone every practice day, transferring once downtown, never missing, never late. He talked about Brianna, who wanted to build things one day and who already was building things, building the team's confidence, building their understanding of the game, building something in each of them that would still be standing long after the final buzzer. He talked about Kwame, who was still learning but showed up anyway, about Destiny, who had cried when she read the closure notice, and then come to practice the very next day and worked harder than she ever had. About Raphael, who translated the plays into Spanish for his grandmother when she came to watch because she did not speak English, but she came to every game anyway and cheered the loudest of anyone. About Boo, Theodore, who listened to everything and said almost nothing and understood more than any of them probably realized. He talked about Marcus. He said, "My coach works nights at a grocery store so that he can spend his days teaching us for free. He has never asked for anything back, not once. That is not a small thing. That is the kind of person that most people only read about." Sandra, by the side door, looked at the floor for a moment. Then Darius talked about the rec center itself. He described it the way you describe something you love, honestly including the flaws, because when you love something, the flaws are not separate from it, but part of it. He talked about the warped floor and how you learned to read it, how you learned which spots would send the ball left and which would hold it straight, and how that knowledge became its own kind of skill. He talked about the cracked backboard and how shooting at it taught you to aim true because the crack would tell you immediately if you had not. He talked about the old photos on the wall and the names underneath them. People who had played here before any of them were born. People who had stood on this same floor and wanted the same things and gone on to become themselves. He said, "This is not just a building. A building is walls and a roof and a floor. This is a place. There is a difference. A place is somewhere that knows you, somewhere that holds your history, somewhere that was here before you and will keep what you left here after you are gone." He held up the basketball, the new one, Michael Jordan's basketball, fully inflated, perfect, sitting in those long-fingered hands like it had always lived there. He said, "This ball was given to me by someone who believes that greatness can come from places like this. From gyms like this one. From kids like us. I believe it too. And I need you to believe it with me." He set the ball carefully in his lap. He looked at the camera without blinking. "Help us stay," he said. And then he was done. Marcus stopped the recording. The red light went off. The gym was very quiet for a moment. That particular quality of quiet that follows something true, when the air needs a second to settle back around what has just been released into it. Then Miss Pauline, who had come without being asked and stood in the back corner the entire time with her hands clasped in front of her, said, "Baby," in a voice that contained approximately 11 years of orange slices and juice boxes and quiet encouragement. That was all she said. Just that one word. Marcus posted the video that night at 9:47. 6 minutes and 42 seconds. No music laid over it. No color correction. No opening title card or closing graphic. No professional anything. Just a boy in a jersey in an orange chair in a gym that was 7 days from closing, telling the truth about why it mattered. By 11 o'clock it had been viewed 800 times. By midnight, 2,000. By 3 in the morning, Marcus woke to his phone buzzing on the nightstand and looked at the screen through blurred eyes and saw 41,000 views and thought he was misreading the number and set the phone down and lay back and then sat straight up again and grabbed the phone and looked at it properly. 41,000. Because at 6:15 that morning, before Marcus was fully awake, before Darius had eaten breakfast, before Sandra had left for the clinic, before Miss Pauline had made her first cup of tea, something happened. From an account with 47 million followers, the video was shared. No caption, no paragraph of explanation, no long statement about community or youth sports or the importance of funding. Just the video, and above it, one single word: watch. Michael Jordan. By the time Darius woke up and came to the kitchen table and picked up his mother's phone because she was holding it out to him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. An expression that was not quite crying and not quite laughing, but was somehow both at the same time. The video had been seen by 900,000 people. By the time he put the phone down, it had passed 1 million. By Sunday afternoon, 3 million. By Monday morning, the number had stopped feeling like a number and started feeling like a weather system. Something vast and moving and larger than any single person's ability to fully comprehend. 2 NBA players reshared it with their own words. A musician with 100 million followers called it the most honest thing she had seen online in years. A sports journalist wrote a piece whose headline was simply, "This 10-year-old will make you feel something." And the donations came. They came in ones and fives and 20s and hundreds. They came from Charlotte and from cities Darius had never been to, and from countries he had only seen in his geography textbook. They came from people who had grown up in rec centers like this one and people who had never set foot in one but understood instinctively what was being lost. They came from people who said in their donation notes, for the warped floor, and for Javon, and for every coach who ever worked for free, and simply, repeatedly, keep playing. In 48 hours, the Eastside Community Sports Center raised $214,000. Not $60,000. $214,000. Miss Pauline sat at her kitchen table for the second time in 9 days. This time she was not crying for sadness. This time she laughed so hard and so long that her neighbor knocked on the wall to check that she was all right, and she knocked back twice. The signal they had worked out years ago that meant, "I am fine. Better than fine. Leave me to it." 3 days after the donations came in, Michael Jordan returned to the rec center one final time. He came the same way he always had. Side door, gray hoodie, no announcement. No photographer trailing behind him to document the moment for anybody's social media or press package. Just the man and the squeaking door and the gym that smelled like rubber and effort and all the years of both. But this time, the gym felt different. The bucket under the ceiling leak was gone. The repair crew had been in on Monday. Sandra had organized it herself, calling the contractors, getting the quotes, approving the work with the calm efficiency of a woman who had been managing complicated logistics on a tight timeline for 10 years and found this particular task straightforward by comparison. The ceiling was patched. The floor was scheduled for resurfacing next week. The cracked backboard had already been replaced. Marcus had done that one himself on Sunday morning, arriving at 7 with 2 volunteers from the neighborhood and a new backboard still in its packaging, working for 3 hours until it was straight and true and solid. The old photos were still on the wall. Marcus had made sure of that. Some things you repair, some things you keep exactly as they are because they are not broken. They are just old, and old is not the same as broken. And the people in those photographs deserve to stay on that wall for as long as the wall was standing. Sandra Webb was already there when Michael arrived. She had come early without telling anyone she was going to, had let herself in with the spare key Marcus had given her, and had been sitting in the gym alone for 20 minutes, just sitting in the quiet of the repaired building, feeling the difference between what it had been and what it was now and what it was going to be. It was the kind of quiet that felt earned, that felt like something on the other side of something hard. She stood when Michael came through the side door. She walked straight across the gym floor and held out her hand and looked at him directly in the way she looked at everything, clear-eyed, measuring, warm underneath the measuring. "Thank you," she said, "for giving him the letter." Michael shook her hand. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with it." They stood together for a moment in the middle of the repaired gym floor. Two people who had arrived at the same child from completely different directions and found themselves standing in the same place, responsible in different ways for the same life. It was a strange and specific kind of bond. Not friendship exactly, not yet, but something with the potential to become it. Then Michael turned. Darius was standing near the far baseline with his basketball under his arm, watching. He had been there for a few minutes already, had come in quietly through the front door while his mother and Michael were talking, had stood back and waited the way he always waited. Patient, present, not rushing the moment toward him but letting it arrive. "Walk with me," Michael said. They went out to the parking lot. The cold was still there. December now, deeper than November. The kind of cold that has settled in and made itself at home and is not planning to leave until it is good and ready. But the sky above the parking lot was clear and very blue. The particular sharp blue that only appears in winter, and the light falling across the asphalt had a quality of cleanness to it that felt like a beginning rather than an ending. Michael stood with his hands in his pockets and looked at the building. The new backboard was visible through the high windows. The repaired section of roof was a slightly different color than the original, newer, brighter, and would stay that way until weather and time brought it into line with the rest. It looked, Michael thought, like a scar in the best possible sense, like evidence of something survived. "You did that," Michael said. "The video, that was you." "You shared it," Darius said. "You gave me something worth sharing," Michael said. "There is a difference." A pause. The cold moved between them, easy and quiet. "I want to tell you something," Michael said, "that I have not told many people." Darius waited. He was good at waiting. "The night I came here for the first time," Michael said, "the night I sat in that folding chair, I had just been turned away from my own club." Darius's eyes widened slightly. Just slightly. The rest of his face stayed still. "A bouncer at the door did not recognize me," Michael said. "Would not let me in. I told him I owned the place. He told me to step aside." He looked at the building, and I stood there outside my own front door and felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt like nobody, like the version of me that existed before any of this. Before the first ring, before anyone knew my name, before any door in the world opened for me automatically. He turned to look at Darius, and that feeling made me call Elton, and Elton told me about this place. And I drove here and sat in a folding chair and watched 8 kids practice on a warped floor. He paused. "And found you." Darius held his basketball and turned this over carefully. He was quiet for a moment. Not empty quiet, full quiet. The kind that means serious thinking is happening just below the surface. "So the door that said no," Darius said slowly, working it out as he spoke, "is what led you here?" "Yes," Michael said. "The closed door," Darius said. "Open this one." Michael Jordan looked at this 10-year-old boy. This boy with his father's hands and his mother's heart, and his own particular brand of quiet, certain, unperformable courage, and felt something move through him that he could not have put into words in any press conference or interview or documentary, something that existed below the level of language entirely. He nodded. "There is one more thing," Michael said. He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. Plain white. Already opened, already read. Not by Michael, but by Sandra, who had reviewed it first and held it for 2 days before deciding that yes. Yes, the moment was right. Yes, her son was ready. Yes. "I have been in contact with the facility where your father is," Michael said. "There is a family visit program, extended visits, private room. You and your mother, if you both choose, can go see Calvin. Next Saturday." Darius went completely still. The parking lot was silent around them. Somewhere above the tree line, a bird moved across the blue sky, crossing from one side to the other in a long, clean arc, and then gone. "I am not telling you what to do," Michael said immediately. "This is your decision and your mother's. I am only telling you that the door is open. What you do with it is yours." The silence stretched. Darius looked at the envelope, at the building, at his basketball, at the new backboard visible through the high window, straight and solid and true. Then he looked up. "Will you come?" he said. Michael blinked. "To the visit," Darius said. "I know you knew him. I know that what you told him at that camp, what you saw in him. I think it would mean something to him to hear it from you directly. Not through me. Not through a letter." He paused. "I think it might be the thing he needs most." The parking lot was very quiet. Michael Jordan stood in the winter light outside a repaired rec center in Charlotte, North Carolina, and understood fully, completely, all at once, what the bouncer had actually done that cold Friday night. It was never about the club, the velvet rope, the tablet, the name not on the list, the step aside. All of it, every small piece of that humbling, unexpected, instructive moment, had been a door closing so that a different door could open. Not a metaphorical door, a real one. The door of a rec center? The door of a hallway where two orange plastic chairs sat facing each other. The door of a shoebox on a high shelf. The door of a visiting room in a correctional facility where a man had been waiting 4 years for something he could not have named, but would recognize the instant it arrived. "Yeah," Michael said. "You'll come?" Darius said. "Making sure." "I'll come," Michael said. The visiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee and the particular quality of recycled air that belongs to institutional buildings. The chairs were hard plastic, not orange, gray, arranged around a square table bolted to the floor. A corrections officer stood near the far wall with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at nothing in particular. Calvin Webb walked through the door on his side of the room. He had Sandra's letter. He knew Darius was coming. He had known for 4 days and had spent those 4 days in a state that was not quite peace and not quite terror, but something that lived precisely between them. The feeling of a man standing at the edge of something he has wanted for so long, that wanting it has become its own kind of home. And now that the thing itself is arriving, he does not know quite what to do with his hands. He came through the door and he saw Sandra first. She looked at him the way she always had, even now, even after everything, with the eyes of someone who has chosen to see the whole person rather than only the parts that were easy. It was the most generous thing anyone had ever done for Calvin Webb, and he knew it and was undone by it every time. Then he saw Darius, his son, 10 years old. Tall, taller than Calvin had expected, which meant time had truly passed and was not just a thing Calvin had been telling himself. With Calvin's own hands wrapped around a basketball that he carried the way Calvin had taught him, pressed flat, owned completely. And behind Darius, filling the doorway with that unmistakable stillness. Calvin Webb put his face in his hands. He did not try to be strong. He had tried being strong for a long time and had learned that strength, used in the wrong direction, used to hold things in rather than to hold things up, was just another way of staying broken. He wept. Darius crossed the room. He set the basketball on the table between them, on that hard gray, bolted-down table in that hard gray institutional room. And he sat down across from his father and he looked at him directly with those steady dark eyes that were Calvin's eyes returned to Calvin from the outside. "Dad," he said. Calvin looked up. "I read all of them," Darius said. Calvin Webb looked at his son's face for a long moment. Then his eyes moved to the man standing in the doorway. The man he had last seen 20 years ago on a basketball court on a Tuesday afternoon. The man who had looked at him and said, "You have good hands," and meant it without performance or politics or anything, except the plain, honest truth. Michael Jordan met his eyes and nodded. One nod, small, direct, certain. The same nod he had given Darius across a warped gym floor. Calvin pressed his lips together, breathed, nodded back. Then he reached across the table with Calvin Webb's hands. Those long-fingered, wide-palmed, basketball-built hands that his son had inherited completely? And he held Darius's face in both of them. "I see you," Calvin said. His voice was wrecked and sure at the same time. "I see all of you." Darius did not look away. "I know, Dad," he said. "I know." Trevor Oakes found out 3 weeks later. His manager Rochelle called him into the small office behind the host stand at Legacy on a Tuesday afternoon, closed the door, and turned her laptop toward him without saying anything first. She let him read the screen, the news article, the video, Michael Jordan's name appearing throughout like a thread stitching separate pieces of cloth into a single thing. Trevor read it slowly, completely. Then he sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. "That was him," Rochelle said. "The man you turned away. That night in November." "I know," Trevor said. "You don't seem surprised," she said. "I'm not exactly," Trevor said. He looked back at the screen, at the photo of the rec center with its new backboard visible through the window, at the photo of 8 kids in matching jerseys, at a small image in one article of a boy holding a basketball outside a building, looking at the camera with the kind of directness that made you feel seen even through a photograph. "I did my job," he said. "He wasn't on the list. I didn't know who he was. I followed the rules." "You turned away the man who owns this place," Rochelle said. "I know," Trevor said. "And because I did, he went somewhere else. And because he went somewhere else, that happened." He gestured at the screen. "I'm not saying I'm glad I didn't let him in. I'm saying I did my job right and something good came from it anyway. That happens sometimes more than people think." Rochelle stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. Not a small, polite laugh. A full, genuine, surprised laugh. The kind that means the world has just demonstrated something unexpected and wonderful. Trevor laughed too. 2 weeks later, Trevor Oakes received a letter from Michael Jordan's business office. Brief, direct, formal in the way that important things sometimes are. It said that effective immediately he was being promoted to head of security for Legacy, with a corresponding change in compensation and responsibility. It was signed by Michael Jordan personally. Below the signature, in the same hand, was a single added line that was not part of the formal letter, clearly written after separately as an afterthought that was not really an afterthought at all but the whole point. It said, "A man who does his job right, even when it costs him, is exactly the kind of man I want protecting what I built." Trevor Oakes folded the letter carefully. He put it in his wallet in the section behind his ID, where he would feel it every time he reached for anything. He kept it there for years. And that is the story of the night Michael Jordan could not get into his own club. And why that one cold moment at a velvet rope changed the lives of people who did not even know his name. A bouncer did his job. A man made a phone call. A boy read 9 letters at a kitchen table until midnight. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a family found its way back to each other. That is what happens when one small act of unexpected humility meets one small act of unexpected kindness. It does not stay small for long. Now before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching or listening from. It could be Charlotte. It could be halfway across the world. It does not matter. We want to know because stories like this one remind us that people everywhere are carrying something heavy and still showing up anyway. Just like Darius. Just like Sandra. Just like Marcus. Just like Michael. And if this story moved something in you, if it made you feel even 1% of what those people felt in that visiting room, then do one simple thing right now. Hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it tells the world that stories about kindness and second chances and the doors that open after the doors that close are worth spreading. Then hit subscribe. Because we find these stories so you do not have to go looking for them. Every single week. Real people, real moments, real proof that the world is better than the loudest news of the day wants you to believe. And finally, do not let this be the last story you hear today. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. We picked it specifically for you. We think you are going to love it just as much as this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And remember, the next time a door closes in your face, do not walk away angry. Walk away with a plan. That is what the greatest do. We will see you in the next one.